Good afternoon. Welcome, sir.
It's okay.
Good afternoon. Yeah. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. It is a privilege to have you with us.
It's my pleasure as well joining your session for the AMP participants, Thank you very much for inviting me.
Sir, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. This is a privilege for us to have you, sir, with us.
It's my pleasure as well, to interact with your AMP participants. Very happy to join.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So
with your permission, we can start, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Rabita is the coordinator of the program, I think. So, Rabita, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, welcome to the program, sir. Respected Chief Guest, sir, CEO, sir, our directors, Director Training, Mehrotra ji, and our esteemed faculty is also here, sir. Madam Kanchna Mala, Shri Mali, sir, our PTC heads are here. PTC Calcutta head, Subhashish Chaudhary. And sir, we have 83 participants from our advanced management programs. This is the 10th batch, sir, we are running. And sir, before I tell you about the program and the participants, sir, I'll start the program with the brief profile of our guest. Sir, Janakiram is the director of IDRBT since January 2021, and he has immense experience in fields of banking and financial technology. He's a PhD from IIT Delhi and was awarded the Boys Cast Fellowship in 1997, the IBM Faculty Award in 2007, and Yahoo Faculty Grant in 2009. He is a board member of Reserve Bank Innovation Hub, Data Security Council of India, IIT Kurnool, and Senate member of IIT Trichy. He has served as a Board of Studies member in universities like VIT University, Cochin University of Science and Technology, Anna University, Gujarat Technical University, Andhra University, SV University, JNTU Hyderabad, and sir has authored over 150 research papers. Sir is also an editor of 6 books. The books are Grid Computing, Building Large-Scale Software Systems, and Grid and Cloud Computing, which have been very well received by the market. Sir was an associate editor of Transactions on Cloud Computing, editor of CSI Journal of Computing, Executive Council member of Cloud Innovation Council, and a fellow of Computer Society of India. He has guided 14 PhD and over 36 MS research and 70 MTech students. He has steered many nationally important research projects with success. He was the principal investigator for projects including Mobitel, mobile telemedicine for rural India, which was an Indo-German project, peer-to-peer concept research, Indo-Italian collaborative project, service-oriented architecture for Linux kernel, and a cloud bursting architecture for document workflow Xerox, and has incubated 2 companies in the cloud computing space. Prior to joining IDRBT, he was a senior professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, IIT Madras. He was also a visiting professor at the Rochester Institute of Technology in USA. And his current research focus is on building large-scale distributed systems and challenges in big data processing along with cloud computing and blockchain technologies. Sir, we welcome you to the program. And sir, I'll continue about the program details and the participants. Sir, this program is a module-based system for working executives. And so we do the sessions on weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, bank holidays. And so 8 batches we did for physical programs. People used to come at the corporate center. But sir, when this pandemic happened, we had to shift to the virtual platform, and then senior authorities thought, why not open it to Pan India? So we got a good response. Last year we had 56 participants, and so this year we had 88 registrations. So sir, people are from 10 public sector banks, SBI, Reserve Bank of India. So we have old private sector banks, new private sector banks. We have Saraswat Cooperative Bank. We have AP States, DBS Bank of India, Federal Bank, Karnataka Bank, RBI is also there. RBI always nominates. So we have Ujjwal Small Finance Bank, and we have a person who is attending this program from Emirates, Dubai. And so we start this program usually in June, sir, June, July, and it is a 10 months program. So we expect to complete it in March. And sir, highlight is is not only virtual, sir, it is a hybrid program. So we have two immersion programs. One we do at IABF Corporate Center, and the other one is at IM campus, where we take the participants there, and they cover modules like strategic management, organizational behavior, and macroeconomics, which is very useful for the bankers. So, sir, this is a monthly event wherein we invite leaders from the industry to address the participants. And, sir, presently, sir, we are running a module on emerging technologies. So, this is a new module we added this year. And we talk about data science, we talk about analytics. We call people from industry who talk on credit analytics and marketing analytics, how it is becoming a tool in the hands of bankers. So, sir, we welcome you to the program, and I request our CEO, sir, to please give a welcome address.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabita. Welcome all the participants for this month's Leader Speak series. And I am glad to present you before you one of the illustrious leaders of IT industry, who is heading IDRBT now. And today being the second birthday of COVID, if you remember, on 30th of 2019, one girl who was pursuing medical education at Wuhan has come back to Kerala, bringing along with her the COVID. So by today is the second, either you tell anniversary or birthday, whatever. So, but why I am reminding you these things, the technological development which would have happened in the next 10 years, it has been preponed to these 2 years, right? So by the IDRBT is in the thickness of the things. Not only they develop the technology from banking industry, and they are also implementing the regulatory sandbox. Whatever the developments happening in the IT sector, if they want to experiment, they are the people who will give them the sandbox to experiment with. And if you see in the last 2 years, how many unicorns we have created? The unicorns we have created more than 30 in last year. And most of the unicorns, if you see, at least you talk of BharatPe, you talk of Zomato, all are basically delivery platforms. So delivery starting from food delivery to the financial assets delivery, right? Take the case of Zerodha, take the case of BharatPe, take the case of other fintech companies. So now the competition is not limited to banking. If you are thinking that the competition is amongst us, amongst public sector banks, among public sector or private sector banks, or to that extent the small finance banks, it is not like that. It is competition is coming from the tech companies now. So fintech companies are slowly creeping into the bank's domain, particularly remittance, particularly giving loans. You have heard P2P lending also. So lending, part of the lending, buy now, pay later, and all these things happening. A few representatives, some of RPA are also there. So they are having a close watch on these companies, right? And who is actually the eye of this RBI? It is the IDRBT and Dr. Janakiram, who gives the RBI the teeth to deal with these fintech companies, how they perform, how do they get regulated, right? So the topic we have chosen is very contemporary, and the person absolutely, now you will love to hear Dr. Janakiram with his illustrious career as given by Ms. Rabita. You have seen, right? Sir, we are proud to have you, sir, and all the participants are eagerly waiting to hear you. So my hearty welcome on behalf of IIBF and all the participants. And thank you for accepting our invitation. And I request you to please go ahead, sir. The floor is open for you.
Thank you very much. And then I'm very thankful to IIBF for making this invitation to me to share my thoughts with the participants. And suddenly, as you rightly put it, we are at a cusp of technological revolution in multiple ways. though you rightly, in a nice way put it, saying that this is the second birthday of the COVID pandemic, I think there is positive thing to everything. I think you brought out the positive thing about COVID. It seems to have suddenly advanced the technological pace at which the world is moving. Suddenly, to a large extent, I think what would have been achieved next 10 years has been compressed to the 2 years. That's a very big thing that has happened due to COVID. Now, having said that, I think there are things that we should be very, very careful when we look at the technology headwinds and how these technology headwinds should be understood. I would like to share my slides, if that is permitted. Is that okay?
Yes, permitted. Ravita, have you made him co-host?
I have slides with me, so I will try to share it, Kavita, if that is okay.
It will be possible. No issue. Ravita, make Dr. co-host.
Yeah. Are my slides visible now? It seems to have shared the slides.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I have actually done is I titled this talk as Emerging Technology Trends and Impact on BFSI Sector. Slightly changed, but I think it's still in alignment with whatever whatever the topic that you had given to me. I would like to focus suddenly in terms of what are the technology headwinds. This is very, very important. Currently, what are the kind of technology headwinds are out there, and then how they're going to affect the BFSI sector. I want participants to certainly look at two parts. Now, we all familiar with Fintechs. We are not so much familiar with tech fins. I think this word, I don't know how many people are using this new word called tech fins as well, But I would like to make a distinction between Fintechs and tech fins, Fintechs are those who are actually startups who are making use of the nimble technologies that are now coming out there in adding value to the banking and financial sector. They're taking specific lines of businesses of the banking and the financial sector and then adding more value to it from the nimble technologies that they can assemble. One of the things that we can see with these fintechs is, as rightly pointed out by the CEO, we saw last 2 years, phenomenal number of unicorns in India coming up, especially in the fintech space. The reason for this is fintechs are very nimble and they can set up, for example, in few months, good aggregator platforms and other kinds of platforms into the cloud and then scale it up, quite well. This is something that the fintechs are now able to do it thanks to the cloud technology and other technologies that we have in building the platforms for high impact, things. This is something that the banking sector will be little difficult to do because of the legacy systems with which they're dealing with, and also the regulatory frameworks that come in terms of how they're operating, Whereas the fintechs to some extent are not come under these so much severe restrictions. So they're able to actually exploit the newer technologies that are coming in, especially the AI, ML technologies, which have seen phenomenal growth in the last 10 years. If you look at the amount of advancements that have taken place in the AI and ML technologies is quite phenomenal. I'll come in a minute and then discuss why such a phenomenal growth has happened in the AI ML technologies and how they're going to further change the way the BFSI sector is likely to undergo the change. The second part is the tech fins. There is some noise coming in the background. Yeah, okay. If you can switch on your switch off your mic, I think that will be nice. Thank you. Yeah. So if you look at tech fins, the concept of tech fins is basically with respect to large technology firms like the Googles or the Facebooks, which are entering into the financial sector. Now, this is what we mean by tech fins. The tech fins, by their very nature, they are technology-oriented firms. They deal with technologies. For example, if you just look at Google alone or Facebook alone, the kind of data centers they operate, 50,000 plus server farms, in multiple locations in the world. Not only that, the kind of technologies they have developed in terms of simple thing like Google Maps, the kind of power that it has in terms of the number of transactions that happen per second on the Google Maps, and the kind of underneath technology that they've used for actually building the entire Google Maps, or for example, the Gmail, or other kinds of technologies where they have, for example, databases which can be deployed worldwide and can be synced in real time using the satellite systems. So these are the kind of things that these technology firms have specialized in and built in these kind of platforms. So they have very superior capability when it comes to actually developing platforms and also giving services at an ultra high scale, not just at a small scale, at an ultra high scale. They can really provide these services at a very ultra high scale. And also one of the things that we should realize with these tech firms is their ability to provide security and also provide the SLA guarantees. If a service is down even for a few minutes, the kind of impact that has on these firms is so huge that I have personally worked, for example, with these tech firms. I had very deep, intense research that I have done with Yahoo Research. Before Google actually came, Yahoo was one of the technology giants that used to be around. And our group has actually done very extensive research with this, with Yahoo Research. In fact, subsequently, they have actually put a data form at IIT Madras for the continuous research with them. And I'm aware of the kind of research that happens underneath to guarantee the SLAs and also to provide the kind of response times that are needed for the customer in these cases. Suddenly, these are technology giants. Now, what they're doing is they're creeping into the finance sector. You can see now Google entering into the payment systems through Google Pay, or WhatsApp with its WhatsApp Pay. This is something that a trend that can actually challenge at a different level the whole financial sector at a different level. So we should be very carefully watching, and we should be aware of these tech fins and what are the kind of things that they're going to bring in. So I want you to understand two parts. One is the fintechs, which growth seems to be phenomenal. Fintechs seems to be adding value to the banking and the finance sector, and we should certainly work with them, and we should make sure that we partner with the right fintech firms and then go along with them as far as the technology trends are concerned. As far as tech fins are concerned, we should be a little bit wary about what kind of impact they're going to cause, and then what kind of things that we should be looking at as far as the technology headwind is concerned. And I'll come to it in a little later in terms of what I want you to understand as part of that. Is the slide not moving? Yeah. So in terms of the technology trends, I would like to actually add 5G and beyond networks. This is something that is, certainly IDRBT is looking at it very, very deeply. We have a 5G use case lab for the BFSI sector set up by the Government of India, Department of Telecommunications. And for the last 1.5 years, we have been working on how 5G is going to affect the BFSI sector. So I'm going to spend some little time on how the 5G is going to change the use cases for the BFSI sector and what kind of new use cases the 5G technologies are going to bring into the sector. The second most important technology that I've also personally worked extensively is this distributed ledger technologies. This is something that is work in progress. This is something that has been challenging all traditional models, because what it is trying to do is it is trying to establish a peer-to-peer model as opposed to the centralized models which the world is fully familiar with. Now, the thing is whether a peer-to-peer systems inherently are going to be much better compared to the centralized systems. This is something that the distributed ledger technologies are bringing to the fore. The cases where distributed ledger technologies are certainly the best approach to BFSI sector, but there are cases where we should be careful when we want to apply this technology. The other most important thing that is happening is this hybrid clouds and the edge clouds. This is again a very important technology headwind for the next. For example, the hybrid cloud technology is going to be the key revolution in the next 10 years that we're going to look at. In recent times, if you analyze some of the critical trends in the banking sector and the financial sector, increasingly they are trying to adopt and move into the cloud in multiple ways. For example, the Deutsche Bank, which is an European bank, moved completely into a public cloud, which is a big step for them. But one of the reasons why they took such a decision was inherently because they wanted to make best use of the AI ML technologies at scale. And that's one of the reasons why they seems to have moved in. But my hunch is that next 10 years, we are suddenly going to see a major movement into the hybrid clouds, not in just the BFSI sector, but in almost all sectors. We will see a movement into the hybrid clouds. And I will also touch upon this a little later. And the other most important thing, though this may not directly result of one sector or the other sector, what we're going to see is the post-quantum computing era. This is something that is going to define the computing in a completely different way. For example, if the quantum computing becomes a reality, which is moving fast towards that, some people give it a 5-year window, some people give it a 10-year window. So in about 5 to 10 years window, what we will see is a challenge coming out from the quantum computing side of things. Once the quantum computing becomes a reality, what you start seeing is the traditional cryptographic algorithms that are employed everywhere will get challenged. And one of the things that we have been closely working at IDRBT is actually right now on lattice-based quantum cryptography, and also trying to move beyond lattice-based cryptography, mainly for the reason that we need to strengthen the public key cryptography systems, looking at the quantum computing challenge that is likely to emerge in the next 5 years. In fact, we have recently launched a product based on the lattice cryptography storage for the cloud, where you can actually search the storage based on the attributes. So this is a product that IDRBT has recently launched, and we're willing to do a POC with the banks to actually provide this post-quantum cryptographic products from IDRBT. This is again one very important thing that I want you to understand, that this is something that is out there and it will be sort of challenging us very, very clearly. The other most important technology which all of us appreciate and also a little bit overused and then also misused is this AI ML technologies. Why I say little bit misused is because often this tag is used for simple data processing algorithms that people are using. But then we should understand AI and ML in recent times have emerged as key technologies, mainly because our ability to handle data has phenomenally grown. There are not much advancements in terms of the models that have taken place, what has really happened in the technology side of things is we have been able to handle large amounts of data with reasonably compressed timelines and build our models using large data. And this is what really changed the way the AI ML technologies have started impacting not just the BFSI sector, almost every sector. We can see now AI ML is going to be one of the key technologies based on which the superiority of the countries itself will get defined. In a recent published survey, I think we figure at number 5 place now, and we have a lot of scope to work on the AI ML technologies and then look at how we can advance, including the BFSI sector in a big way using the AI ML technologies. I will again come back to this a little bit towards the end, but then let me put these 5 technologies in perspective and then also see where is of course, cybersecurity and data privacy is going to be a key thing going forward, not just next 10 years, 20 years. Cybersecurity and data privacy are going to be the key technologies that all of us have to be very careful, especially in the BFSI sector. In fact, IDRBT has actually looked at cybersecurity as a key theme and then started with what we call as a ethical hacking lab now. And with MOUs with IIT Madras and IIT Bombay and IIT Delhi, we plan to actually extend this ethical hacking lab infrastructure to multiple locations to train young minds in terms of how cybersecurity should be looked at. Because there's something that we feel again is very, very important for the BFSI sector. Now, coming to where exactly is this technology is going to impact the BFSI sector, my extensive discussions with the bankers certainly tell me there are 5 aspects of the banking system certainly that can get affected by these technologies. One is the customer experience. The second is the credit scoring. And the third is the risk management. Fourth is the improved productivity. And fifth, I see, which is something that the CEO has pointed out, changing banking business. We are all thinking that no, the old style working will continue, but then I think the context of banking business is likely to change completely given the kind of headwinds that we are seeing. Let me go a little bit and then see what this. I've summarized what I understood from my extensive discussions. That these are the 5 aspects I see are very, very important aspects as far as the technology change is concerned. But then often when I talk to the bankers, what I see is that they have a tendency to actually project past into future. Okay, but my hunch and my suspicion is that future is going to be somewhat completely different, not necessarily just a projection of your past experience. And that's where basically the changing banking business, in my opinion, is going to be the root of the whole impact of the technology headwinds as far as banking business is concerned. I've also heard one of the IT giants, Cesar, saying that he has actually warned the bankers about this changing banking business, banking not being as usual, being the key thing that the bankers should look at. And some of them apparently now come back to him and then tell that they should have listened to him a lot more carefully, because they start seeing that banking business itself is undergoing tremendous change, in terms of how the fintechs are challenging or the tech fins are challenging, Now, in terms of looking at each one of these aspects a little deeper, if you take the customer experience, I think what the customer is now expecting is a lot more than what the previous offerings that the banks have been able to do. If you put the customer at the center and then look at what is going to be the frictionless and enhanced experience as far as the customer is concerned, there are several aspects which the new technologies are going to completely change for you. first thing is I will tell you this experience and how things are changing all over the world, not just in India. If you look at Uber in the US, which is trying to onboard the drivers for whatever the third-party drivers as part of the service that they offer. One of the key friction points that they found is how do we pay these drivers, on a regular basis, and how do we actually work with them, and that led Uber in turning itself into a mid-sized banking company, because that added more easy way of actually onboarding the drivers and paying them. Same thing happened with, if you look at China, the Alipay and WeChat, for example. Both of them, when they started offering additional payment options and then payment experience to the customer, what was observed is the money that moves from the bank into these platforms never actually leaves these platforms, because they are just staying, the money is just staying there because it's just moving in there, and this is a very, very important dimension that the bankers have to consider, because now the customer experience, if you put at the center, you need to now understand what the customer expects from you and how to make it the most of the tasks that the customer does as frictionless. That's the most important thing. In fact, today, if you see the Google Pay, the key thing that is driving Google Pay in terms of getting more customers into it is basically the UPI experience. Whatever is coming in from the UPI, that they are leveraging on it and then providing the customer with a very, very seamless experience, and that's what is bringing the customer into the Google Pay. Or I'm not sure with other platforms what is happening, but at least this platform, which I also use, can see the kind of experience that the customer gives. It's very easy to actually do the financial transaction, just moving the money from one place to the other place, is something that the customer really will look for. And this is an enhancement that will change the entire game. Going forward, I think the technologies that provide the kind of experience for the customer, you need to certainly leverage. Now, one is the platform part. I won't go into the platform part because it's a very complex thing, and then suddenly requires a lot more deeper understanding how these platforms evolve, how platforms are developed. But I will point out to what kind of things that are happening in the AI ML space here. For example, customer modeling is becoming extremely important. For example, if the money just comes and stays in the bank, and then the kind of returns that the money provides for the customer, if it is not commensurate with whatever he alone can plan and then do something more with his money and then get the best out of his money, that is part, I think we have a big responsibility there. And that's where basically we need to model each customer and then try to actually cater to his requirements and needs, both in terms of the growth of the money as well as the credit requirements for the customer. This is where the AI ML technologies are doing a phenomenal thing. For example, I've seen people who actually use the Twitter feeds of customers and trying to target the customers in terms of what their requirement is. This is something that was amazing when I looked at it, because the tweets of the customer will tell you what is happening with him. And then if you just simply, look at his public profiles and tweets, you are in a better position to understand his requirements, than you have been able to do earlier. These are some things that are opening up now with the kind of technology that is at the hands of people, right? And so this is something that I want you to look at. Same thing with respect to credit scoring. When we go to actually look at credit scoring, I think India to a large extent was not a credit-based society. Credit is not available universally, and this is one of the major problems of an Indian financial system. I am told that when people borrow about 1,000 rupees in the morning in quite a few places, they actually pay 100 rupees as an interest by the evening. That's the level of credit gap that we have in the country in terms of what is possible and what is not being done at the moment. Using the Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana account, we have been able to do the financial inclusion part, which means that we are able to get a lot of people into the financial system by creating their accounts with the banking system. But the next big revolution that needs to happen is basically this credit revolution, where we provide credit democratically to all the eligible people in a much better fashion. And that's where we start seeing the credit becomes the key driver in the next 15, 20 years. I compare the credit with what I see as this thing in education space, because I'm basically an academician for 31 years at IIT system. And so my heart is academician at heart, We actually in academics, what we say is we can pick up any individual who is good, who can learn and then whose mind is great. We want to pick him up and then give the education so that he serves the society later, right? So that is the principle, academic principle. We pick people who are bright and then whom we want to educate and then, give back to the society. Same thing should happen as far as credit is concerned, in my opinion. There could be out there a lot of Ambanis and then, a lot of other, very, very, enterprising people who can actually be able to generate wealth for the society. We need to pick them and then give them the credit. This is something that our credit system should be able to do. It is not about only picking some rich person and then with a little this thing and you're able to give the credit. The credit should be given to the credit-worthy people who can build wealth for the society. This is something that is very, very important going forward. And I hope we move into a credit-based society where we are able to take these technologies, for example, the AI ML technologies, and we're able to build credit models that is really worthy of this kind of lofty goal, that the society is able to become stronger with the wealth that is generated with the credit that we have. This again, yeah, that's a very lofty goal, but I believe that these technologies suddenly open up to that. This third most important thing is the risk management, and I will not dwell too deep on the risk management. So as bankers, you're familiar with the risk and that, risk that is there. And then certainly I think, the technology is one aspect of the risk management. For example, technology headwind itself is a risk for you in terms of what could likely happen into the system itself. Coming to the last part of it, improved productivity. This is where I think the robotic automation processes and several tools are coming into picture. And this is where you will start seeing that a lot of internal processes of the bank can be re-engineered with an aim to actually improve the productivity. These are the 5 aspects that I feel are suddenly going to have a big impact as far as the technology headwinds are concerned, in my opinion. But I'm open to discussion at the end. I would like to see if I get some more these things with a view to actually get these trends. We have actually redesigned our own IDRBT research centers into basically these 6 centers. For example, Center for AI ML, Center for Cybersecurity and Data Privacy, Center for Emerging Networks and Cloud Computing, Center for Open and Digital Banking. Certainly, we are looking at Banking Use Case Innovation Lab. This is where we are trying to focus on what are the different other things that banking use cases can be thought of as part of the technology, this thing. and also Center for Quantum Computing. These are the centers that we have thought of, and then we are actually reworking out our centers, aligning them with the technology trends that are coming up. I will spend some little time now on each of these technology contexts and then see where the banking use cases might be actually coming in with respect to each of these technology trends. I'll dwell a little deeper from this aspect onwards, and then spend next 15-20 minutes on the specific technology context. For example, I'll take 5G and look at the tech context and see what is likely the changes that the BFSI sector might experience with the 5G. And I made it very, I'm not going too deep into the technology per se, trying to actually make as much a higher level view of the technology as possible, knowing fully well the audience probably will require a much broader treatment of the technology, not the deep dive treatment of the technology. As we understand, 5G is now one of the most important technologies that is getting rolled out all over the world, not just in India. And we saw recently the 5G disruption that it has caused for the aviation sector in the US. So 5G is something that everybody is looking forward to. What is the reason why people are looking at these 5G deployments, and then why is this going to change the way we look at the kind of applications that can be powered with 5G? First thing is you get ultra high speeds. 100 Mbps beyond that is what the 5G will give. So you can, the kind of applications that you can support on 5G are suddenly many more than what we've been able to support with the earlier networks. The other one is basically it gives very low latencies. The packet latencies are so small that what we can do in real time is much more than with 5G than with the previous networks. And the other one is the connected devices. For example, one of the things that is given as a good example for 5G is the connected cars, self-driving cars, and then if they start using the network, probably 5G will be the one that they will need to support the connected cars. So these are the kind of new things that can happen with the 5G. That's why people are looking at 5G, with a lot of expectation that it's going to change the way things are going to happen in the world with 5G. What I would like to actually point out, of course, this itself can be treated, for about half an hour, 1 hour. I can give the lecture, but then I want you to just understand what is the key thing that we see as an important point for the BFSI sector. With 5G, what you get is these edge clouds. What we mean by the edge cloud is a cloud infrastructure that can be set up very easily at the edge of the network. This could be on a pole. For example, you see an electrical pole, and then there could be a box there, a box which is more like an edge box, but then it has the compute power, storage power, and all these available with the networking, 5G networking that you can support with that box, And this is where you can start now, having, augmented reality, virtual reality applications that can be streamed from this box to any device, any 5G device, And what is the kind of stuff that it is going to now, support? For example, one of the things that one can think of 5 years from now, bank in a box. This 5G box can support most of the edge banking services, which means that I can actually use my 5G mobile phone for giving almost the bank experience on my phone through these AR VR applications, which means that you don't need to have a physical branch anymore, and you should be able to set up these branches very easily with a box in a branch. You can put this into this edge box with all the required software installed in that, which means that the edge will be able to take the data feeds and should be able to do the AI and ML algorithms at the edge. And what is needed data will only be shipped to the backhaul network. okay? And this is something that will completely change the way the infrastructure itself gets powered with 5G, right? This is something that the AR/VR application part with the 5G use case lab is something that IDRBT has now done, and then this is available as part of the demo thing in the IDRBT lab. How this whole thing works. There's certain kinds of research things that we do here, but then that's in terms of how efficiently the whole thing can be done. The AI/ML algorithms can be done over the edge, and the backend network is something that we continuously work on. And then this is something that we believe we can create an IP going forward in terms of creating the applications for the BFSI sector at the edge level. Edge clouds are likely to become the common thing in most of the places. We previously missed the revolution in cloud to some extent. But here is a case where I think the government with all its efforts and the DOT with all its efforts has been able to now push the 5G, in a big way. And I believe that next 5 to 10 years, you will start seeing that the 5G revolution is going to create a lot more edge clouds, as an ubiquitous clouds, as part of the whole infrastructure that we develop in the country. I'm not going to go deep on every aspect of this, but then I would like to only say one part of it. With 5G, edge cloud and then local edge clouds. For example, at a village level, you should be able to set up a local 5G network, which can have all the modern applications that are part of the edge cloud, which can mean that for the first time we will have an ability to push the deep technologies to the village level very seamlessly. We don't need to now wait for a gap of some years before the modern technology just makes it available in the village level. In fact, we can start now, we can actually leapfrog this technology by using the 5G local clouds, which means that we can set up in a 50-kilometer geofence, a 5G cloud, where we can also support local entrepreneurship to actually come in and then set up these 5G edge clouds. And this could actually power the villages into a smart systems. This is where basically we're looking at orchestrations and then how things can be brought in as a network slice, financial flow at a national level, how we integrate this into the financial flow at the national level. This is something that we are looking at very, very, very deeply. This will be the kind of system that we will start seeing. For example, one of the things that we have done now is that with the UPI, we are able to actually scale to a few billion transactions per month. But going forward, as it is indicated, that we might actually reach 1 billion per day transactions. And one of the key things that the bankers should worry about is the kind of infrastructure that you need to create to be able to support this level of transaction scaling. And this is where I believe some localization and also looking at how geofencing the transactions could certainly be a model that we could think of going forward. And this is where I think new thinking is required from the bankers. For example, why all transactions should leave the bank, to a large extent, if the bank can localize with the communities with which they have set up, and if they are able to support a platform for local transactions, and I think a lot of transactions don't need to actually leave the banking, platform. And this is something that the bank should start considering. And that's also the way the Uberization of the banks in terms of bringing the local needs onto its platform and connecting the local people into the platform for doing lots of things locally with the platform that the bank supports is, I think, something that the bank may have to consider going forward. And the technologies exist now. This is where I think it's very, very important for bankers to put themselves in the new context, not the old context, not moving taking this new technology and trying to project the past into the future doesn't really help you in getting the real worth of these technologies. This is where I want you to open up into your mental space and then ask you to look for applications that are completely different from what you have done previously. And that's where actually the banking use cases need to be very, very innovative going forward with these new technologies, right? We are also looking at multiple use cases for the 5G context, but then I've given you the, this thing, and going forward, what we are also planning in a much larger landscape is what we call as basically the distributed ledger technology, integrating the distributed ledger technology into the 5G network slice. And this will probably will start actually providing a much different platform, and the kind of application that people would like to do on this platform is going to be completely different. I will leave this part, and then I'll actually probably move on to the other kinds of applications that we're looking at. Yeah, the other kinds of applications that I want you to suddenly look at before I conclude, because I have next 10 minutes I wish to conclude. So one of the key things that I feel is very, very important is this identity, digital identity concept. This itself is undergoing tremendous change, and this becomes the core basis for us to be building any financial stack. Now, Aadhaar has become a basis of a basis for personal identity in some sense, but then we are still struggling with creation of a digital identity that will be the basis for financial transactions. And the reason why a digital identity becomes very, very important is what we need to understand with a digital identity is we want to actually protect the personal information relating to the digital identity and allow the digital identity in a virtual form to be used for all transactions. This is something that needs a very careful study and building. What we did after I came over to IDRBT is basically we looked at this KYC as a big pain point as far as the whole financial infrastructure is concerned. What we propose to do with this KYC is basically turn this KYC to a what we call as a protect your know your customer to protect your customer. The concept should be to protect your customer, right? And I think often know your customer is used as a very a tool whereby you ask customer as much data as possible, and then every entity, financial entity, is doing this. And in fact, there's a big pain point as far as the customer is concerned. Whereas if you look at this as a protect your customer, then I think this is where basically a DLT based system can play a very, very significant and vital role. For example, how do I share my data without really revealing my identity? Okay. Technology has these solutions. If you look at very, very carefully, technology has these solutions. For example, without really sharing much data, you can prove who you are. This is what we call it as zero knowledge proof. Zero knowledge proof means that when you exchange data with somebody else, you will exchange the data such that no useful information is actually shared, but that the other person can be convinced with what you have shared that you are what you are, or you are actually giving the correct proof. This is what we mean by zero knowledge proof, and this is very, very important concept technologically. These are some things that we need to bring into our system, because one of the key things is if the customer identity is compromised, everything else gets into difficulty. And this is where basically we feel identity and beyond, we need to work very, very carefully. If you look at the data privacy regulations that are coming all over the world, now one of the key things is, we want to actually work with various financial systems without really, compromising the privacy of the individual. This is where the concept should change from know your customer to protect your customer. I think this is something that I believe is very, very fundamental, and financial system should move from know your customer to protect your customer. That should be the end goal, In fact, what we did was we are now working with the government in creating what we see as a identity system, digital identity system, where the Aadhaar, everything else that is there. Along with that, we will create an additional stack, financial stack. And the fundamental component of this financial stack is going to be the digital identity stack. And then that's why where basically we're using the distributed ledger technologies and the zero knowledge proofs to make sure that the customer data is not compromised. And then we get a next generation system that looks at digital identity very, very carefully. In my opinion, unless we get this digital identity concept correctly, we will have several issues going forward in terms of how the whole platforms work with this digital identity. The other very important thing that I wanted to also bring to your attention and then sort of conclude there, the NLP and the language translation. Now, machine learning models have phenomenally advanced themselves to be able to now do the kind of machine translation and machine learning, that is possible at a scale that we have not seen earlier. And this is going to change the way the customers are going to interact with your systems. This is something that I want you to open up yourself to. If some of you are writing down, please write down this system called GPT-3. Okay, I don't know how many of you know this. If you actually can write down GPT-3, and then look for this. This is a system. If you give basically a keyword, it will generate the complete story based on that on that keyword. And then when you read this story generated by this system, you will not be able to make a distinction between whether this is generated by a machine or by a human being. That's the level at which it can now generate. In fact, one of the problems for academics is we use plagiarism checks to see if people are copying. Apparently, there is one guy who used GPT-3 to just finish his entire MS degree. Now you can see what is the level of sophistication that these machine learning models have been able to incorporate. Why I'm pointing this? I'm pointing out this to you because if you look at now Siri, if you look at your Apple Watch, if you just ask it, dial Bhavani, it just dials for me, my wife number. All that I need to do is just I don't need to even train my Apple Watch now. All that I say is dial Bhavani and then it just dials my wife, right? So the interactive part of it that is actually coming into customer or user experience is several orders of magnitude now more than what we're seeing earlier. And you should be alert to this change in the user interaction modules, and banking system will not be an exception. One of the key things that we want the banks to support is more natural interfaces. At the same time, when you support the natural interfaces, there are additional features that you should bring in. For example, voice identification. That's an additional security feature that can naturally come when people are working with a voice, right? Voice with your system. There's something, again, IDRBT is looking at, multiple technologies there. Because you get now the signature of the person through the voice itself. So you have an additional check, several other things are possible. For example, if you do the multimodal features, the face plus voice plus other recognition features, all this put in there, a customer is naturally protected without asking him to change the PIN each time and then, do lots of other things when they access the system. I think we can move into a more natural models for the users to be able to experience very naturally working with our IT infrastructure, and that's going to be a big boon, in my opinion, especially remembering multiple passwords and then making people go through a huge lot of security features is something that is important, but then we need to move to a more simplified and more secure versions. And this is something I believe is research that should be pursued very carefully as part of the banking system. As a concluding point, what I would like to say is banks traditionally were, take it with a pinch of salt, are more concerned with money, what we say as Lakshmi, right? The Lakshmi part of thing, in our traditional wisdom, banks are all about Lakshmi, right? They know how to grow money, and they know transaction based. They know all these things about all the processes that result in money growing or at a faster rate. But I think banks also should need to be a little bit of Saraswati in them, which means that the technology part, understanding the technology part, and then innovating on the technology space is also needed for the banks as they move forward into the future. If you ask this question, how many new products a banking sector by itself has produced to the world, which affected rest of the world, it's a bit difficult to figure out which technology products per se have been an innovation of the banking sector itself. And one of the things that I would like here to be considered very carefully by banking themselves is to set up this technology innovation labs as part of that. And that's where basically customer experience, they understand the customer much better than anyone else. And then the technologies that actually help in the customer experience, if banking sector is able to generate, which impacts rest of the other sectors because of this, I think we have arrived at a different level of a banking system, in my opinion, and that's my, plea to all the people who are sitting here. Not only innovate on the banking products, finance products, you also innovate on the technology side of things. And then when you able to combine both these, I think we will see a different kind of an institution as far as banking sector is concerned. And this is my, concluding remark, but not before, one final statement, relating to the banking, how banking business itself is likely to get impacted. I would certainly see supply chain management, modernization of supply chain management and embedded finance as original contributions that the banking sector can do to the entire, entire business community. Because what we see is what COVID has done is it is actually shown us the problems that we have in the supply chain management. The supply chain disruptions are a big issue going forward. And this is where a lot of modernization is concerned. And this is where the platforms that banks can think of, if they can actually provide the supply chain management and also embedded finance, which can become part of their platforms, I think that's going to be a big thing going forward. And I look forward to actually more innovative solutions coming from the banking sector, not just for the customers, but also for MSMEs and also big financial sector. This is where banking can revolutionize lots of things using the technology. With these words, I will conclude, and I'm open to any discussion for a few questions from the participants. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I am Rambabu from Indian Overseas Bank, sir. My question is related to, because when we are moving for the technology, we are using the various consumer and customer details, sir. And people are raising the voices that it is our personal and privacy data. So as at IDRBT, how we are going to cope up with this? And if we exclude that, will it affect the data quality or not?
Excellent question, Rambabu. One of the things that the data privacy part of the research at IDRBT does is basically the consent management. If you look at it, even the MIT has actually released the consent management. Customer data should never be used without his consent. That is a cardinal principle. You can't use the customer data for whatever you want to do. You need a consent from the customer. There is a consent management framework now put in place, and then all your platforms should actually use the customer data, either anonymize it in case your tools are using this, or if you're directly using the customer data to support some functionality for him. His consent is a must as far as the system is concerned, and this is something that is now well understood, and then this is something that will become part of the systems going forward. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Sanjay. So my question is about the human face of the technology, because it's technology plus human resources and the other resources. And you have also touched upon the NLP. And would you like to share your thoughts on the collaborative intelligence between the humans and the technology, or the human technology adaptation fit that is going in the technology area as of now, sir?
Yeah, excellent question. See, one of the things when we worked with Xerox is basically, in the US, all our research actually wanted to consider human in the loop. Okay. See, there are certain tasks for which humans are excellent compared to the machine. Now, if you can include the human into the loop at the appropriate place, I think you do a lot more easier things. This is, I don't know whether you're familiar with what we call as crowdsourcing, right? Some of the tasks are actually, if they're crowdsourced, human beings can contribute to your system much better and faster than basically the machine trying to do that task. There are certain tasks for which the machine is best suited. There are certain tasks for which the humans do extremely well, in terms of performing that task. So it's always actually, putting the human into the loop, in my opinion, it works the best. For example, you look at all the IVR systems. One of the biggest problems with this IVR system design is, if you get into a loop, it just doesn't let you get out. You have to press 1, then again it will ask you to press 2, and you get all of this. And at the end, if this is not addressing your need, you don't know how to escape this IVR system, right? So basically getting the human into the loop at the appropriate time possibly is the best design, in my opinion, But of course, the tasks are changing. If you look at the robotic automation process, I think this is something that each bank has to analyze now. Which of those tasks, which are best actually, done by an AI ML algorithm, right? Given this, I'll also tell you the problems, for example, credit scoring algorithms, this is again, I want you to bring your attention to this. Using an AI ML for a credit scoring could be actually have problems when, when there is a bias built into the system, for example, often if the data is not really, carefully vetted and seen, the way the machine gets trained by this data could be actually detrimental for the human being, when you are actually, these algorithms are applied, using the machine learning models. This is something that ethical aspects of AI and ML is something the financial space will be more worried than any other space. For example, if you take more loans, your credit worthiness goes up, then you're encouraging people to, in the first place, to take loans, even when they require. If you want to build your credit score, then if it is the algorithm that needs to be done, then the algorithm decides now what should be happening. And this is something that we should be worried about, In the US, there were now attempts in terms of looking at bias and then legislatively actually banning AI and ML algorithms being used for bias, for targeting individuals. I think we are on a little bit of a space there where we should be very concerned as far as ethics are concerned, in my opinion. So AI ML algorithms should be used very, very carefully, and then we need processes in place to make sure that the models themselves are not biased or targeting any particular community or individuals, right? This is something people are getting now alert to as far as AI ML technologies are concerned. Hope that answers your question.
Sir, I have a small follow-up question. Now, from banking companies who are incorporating technology, we have become technology companies which are serving banking. But the way we are incorporating the new technologies, at the same rate, we are not updating or upskilling our human resources. And there we see, is my personal opinion, that we see a lot of gap in technology implementation and the human resources.
Yeah, this is something that I've also noticed, this is again, I should say, very deep question, See, on one side, what is happening is when at IDRBT also, when we do these training programs, one of the questions people ask me sometimes is, do I need to know this much technology? I'm from BCom background, MCom background, or I'm a lawyer, should I know this much technology? Is a question that comes up, right? Now it's a question of traditional skills that are with the banking sector, and then the new age technology skills that are needed for them to adopt some of these technologies into their banking processes. I think there is no option but to upskill your people or get right skilled people into your organizations. And I don't think there is any choice as far as this is concerned going into future. The earlier that we realize it, the better. Remember, for example, typewriting skills at one point of time. I don't know how many of you are basically of my age group. You would have realized every street corner when we grew up, there used to be these typewriter machines. And then people used to be getting that shorthand, full hand, and then all that speeds, at which they are able to type. But those skills are all gone now. If you look at now computing skills, we have moved, the whole set of things have become obsolete now, and we moved into a new model completely. And I think we should realize technology is throwing a very, very important challenge, and we need to understand that challenge and move forward with that challenge. In my own lifetime, I've seen what has happened to Kodak. I used to visit Rochester. These Kodak used buildings used to be there in Kodak, where they used to employ a lot of people, In fact, what Kodak as bonuses used to give, people used to buy all these new cars, in the Rochester Main Street, which I used to visit, right? I used to stay in that, main hotel, Hyatt Hotel there, and I used to see them, Now, in a matter of time, when the film thing is gone and then everything became digital, okay, the whole industry has just collapsed in no time. It just collapsed, okay, and they didn't realize it is coming across for them. The digitalization of the images, digital images, have completely, and what has been once a thriving community in Rochester, they started facing what we see as a lots being vacant, and then vacant lot problem. This is being now criminals using those lots and all that stuff. In fact, one of the problems that I was solving for them later when I visited last year, a couple of years back, along with my wife, because my daughter is studying in Cornell and we want to stay nearby. One of the problems that Rochester municipality wanted to look at is this vacant lot problem. Okay. The data science, how to apply data science and then solve this vacant lot problem. So in that sense, I think, when technology comes in, it is neutral. And then when the technology headwind comes, I think we should be prepared to accept the change and then move with that change, So upskilling, in my opinion, is the only option for this rather than anything else.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, this is Sushil Kumar Lal, DGM from Bank of Baroda. Sir, you touched upon multimodal features of authentication. In that context, as a customer, I have to give KYC to whichever institution I am dealing with. And as a banker, it is difficult for me, though it is mandatory. Each time I have to open an account, enter into a transaction, I have to verify the KYC of the customer. And we have a central KYC registry also. So in that context, whether RBI or IDRBT are developing anything, now video KYC has also started. So that once a customer gives video KYC or KYC authentication they have given, whether biometric or physical through Aadhaar card, it can be assessed by any banker, any financial institution, and customer need not give KYC again and again, whether video KYC or physical through documents.
Yeah, in fact, this requires a careful, deep study. What we have actually now proposed to the government as a project, at a multi-institutional project, is video KYC, an automated video KYC system using the distributed ledger technologies, where the customer whole data will be captured into the distributed ledger and into a blockchain system. And then this can be shared with the customer consent, because the blockchain system will come along with the smart contract. So by involving the customer, you should be able to share the data, whatever necessary data, through the consent, through the smart contract with any other entity. This is something that we have proposed, and now we will be developing this system. And this will become the basis for the financial stack, development of the financial stack. And there are many more things that we are contemplating using this. For example, when we moved from IIT Madras to IDRBT, one of the things my wife kept getting from SBI is that, please do your KYC by coming to the physical branch, otherwise we are going to freeze your account, right? Now, one of the simple things that is possible is this can be triggered by the system itself. And then, when at mandatory times, whatever is needed, the system itself can automate this whole process of collecting the required data from the customer once for the entire, sector, rather than every bank dealing with it separately and then, every individual. This is something that we believe is very, very important going forward, and this needs to be solved. And I don't think this is a regulatory issue. This is, cross-regulatory issue as well, because, you do it for MCA system, and you do it for, a SEBI system, and you do it for so many people. I think it's across the board. You need actually a good solution for the digital identity going forward, and protection of the digital identity, in my opinion, is a lot more important than just, collecting the identity part of it, So I think this is something that we have started now. We have started building that system as part of, multiple institutions are involved in that. And then thanks to RBI Innovation Hub, this is where a lot of presentations have happened. And then this is where we understood that the KYC is a central piece that needs to be solved for building a very stable and then, open up the entire financial stack for innovation, in my opinion. And I think that is something that we see going forward is an important thing, right? Yeah.
And sir, what is embedded finance? You mentioned embedded.
Yeah. Embedded finance, in my opinion, is something that bankers should seriously consider. What we mean by embedded finance is basically, you look at a supply chain, see, everything is basically, the whole industry is supply chain oriented. There is somebody who is supplying, and that get integrated into something else, and finally a product comes out, right? Now, what we mean by embedded finance is basically, that, this thing has been supplied by somebody. So the finance can happen to the entire supply chain and not necessarily to a particular, now what banks are doing, they're just financing the organizations, right? Now, when they finance the organizations, there is a heavy risk involved. That's where the bad debt and all this is happening, But on the other hand, if you actually can think of, embedded finance means that now as the activities happen, those parts of it automatically gets financed. And then when to finance someone, and then how much to finance. And then you have guarantees now that things are happening as they're supposed to be happening, right? This is something as a platform, if you're able to build modernize supply chains with embedded finance. This is where banking sector can play a very, very vital role, in my opinion, because what happens now is, if there is a supply chain disruption for various reasons, bank itself can intervene to solve the problem of the supply chain, disruptions, right? And that is where the modern platforms, banking platforms, should actually consider these finance, especially the MSME finance, linked up with this embedded finance. That is the idea with which I'm telling you. And the technology exists now. For example, the DLT and the smart contract technology can suddenly bring in the this aspect further to the banking platform. Okay. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good
Nyati this side. Sir, my question is maybe little out of the context. So, like, what is the way forward? Like, because for the large borrowers of their transaction monitoring together as a banking system as a whole, whether this modules or this technology can be helpful, like how their transactions are moving, banking system as a whole. Like now, only SMA monitoring is there, centralized, and that data is shared within the banks. Similarly, some large level, like so that there are no big banking frauds or such issues.
Yeah, I guess, this is something that I think, going forward will suddenly get developed. What we call as a RegTech, regulatory technology, For example, it's possible to embed, into the system itself, where a transaction of a certain type and certain nature is happening, it is automatically reported to the regulatory framework, right? So that's possible now. In fact, one of the things when we are developing the 5G based network slicing architecture, where in the financial slice itself, the RegTech components will come. The microservices relating to the RegTech can be embedded there, so that they're automatically reported to the regulator. For example, regulator gets the knowledge. Multiple regulators can also be getting a knowledge of what really is happening with the transactions. And that is something that's going to come naturally into the system going forward.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And in my opinion, it's already happening. If you look at the income tax department, they have a lot of visibility into all the transactions that people are making, right?
Yes, sir.
Their portal has all the information relating to all the transactions, important transactions people have made. If you make a transaction beyond a certain value, I think income tax department comes to know of it, and they'll also seek information if they need to, right?
So going forward, LEI number will be used similarly. Like now, LEI number is becoming mandatory for big, large borrowers. So whether that will be the purpose, that way it will be moving.
I think, I'm probably not the expert to be commenting on that, because, see, some of this, I think the corresponding experts will know what needs to be regulated. For example, one of the things that is happening now is the GST portal, right? A lot of things get recorded on the GST portal, and then, a lot of people are tapping that information to provide the finance and all that, because any invoice raised is available there, right? Credit against that invoice and all that is what is likely the moving space. And suddenly the account aggregator system that is collecting a lot of data and then collating that data, I think we will see a lot more innovation based on that happening in the entire sector itself,
Any other question? Because these are all very thought-provoking things. So I think, sir, now the questions have been over. So can you stop sharing your PPT, sir?
Yes, sure. I'll do that. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've stopped sharing. Yes.
So I think now this is the time, sir, for us to share, extend the vote of thanks to you, sir. You have spared your valuable time I think our CEO is not having the good network. So that is why he was not in a position to listen properly. Asked me to do this question answer and session, and after that, with vote of thanks, we will close the meeting. So, sir, on behalf of the IIBF and on my personal behalf, we extend a very hearty, actually, thanks and gratitude to you for sparing your valuable time with us. Not only time, but a rich treasure of knowledge which you are having with you, and a lot of experience. These areas are definitely very complex areas which you were talking. I have taken note of many things, but I have to actually read it again and again to find out the actual meaning and how it can be applied in the banking. And we have to see over a period of time how these technologies are adopted. But definitely, this many of the things have already come in, and although in nascent stage, but with the growing partnerships with fintech companies, and even we are taking the lessons from the tech fins, as you said. So a lot of market intelligence and data analytics platforms are being developed in the banks. So over a period of time, I think the banking will take a definite change. Whatever transformation we have seen so far, much more than that we will be seeing afterwards. So you have been very right to say that we have been dealing with Lakshmi in the banks, but Saraswati is also required to be there, and we have to adopt a lot of technology. Otherwise, like many big companies, many of the players may be out of the market very soon, because the customers' expectations are changing overnight. They are also actually very much conversed with these technologies, because many of them are working with the technology companies and they are our customers as well. So even though they are dealing with our banks with through generations, but now their expectation is that we have to be progressive enough and have to have good technology when others are having. Why we not, our bank will not have? So like that, actually, they are also having their expectations. So we cannot actually keep this technology at bay and embrace them sooner or later. So it is much better if we prepare our workforce and take the desired skill sets with in the workforce, so that they can understand these technologies and use it on day-to-day basis. But the deliberations of today will go a long way. Today we were having the presentations from the participants in other batch. This is having actually a combination of two batches, sir. Batch 1 and batch 2. So in batch 2, presentations were happening since morning, and some 5 presentations were on technology only.
Oh, great.
So, so I was just thinking that in the evening we are going to have actually the master knowledge from about all these technologies which we were using just as a words. So thank you very much, sir. And we will be troubling you again for more deliberations from your side. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. All the best to all the participants. One of the participants,
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Ask for the PPT. I'll share it with them. Yes, I'll share the PPTs. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all the best to all the participants. It was a long day. Thanks, Ravita ji, for coordinating it so well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So I think now this is the time, sir, for us to share extend the vote of thanks to you, sir. You have spared your valuable time. I think our CEO is not having the good network. So that is why he was not in a position to listen properly. Asked me to do this question answer and session, and after that, with vote of thanks, we will close the meeting. So, sir, on behalf of the IIBF and on my personal behalf, we extend a very hearty, actually, thanks and gratitude to you for sparing your valuable time with us. Not only time, but a rich treasure of knowledge which you are having with you, and a lot of experience. These areas are definitely very complex areas which you were talking. I have taken note of many things, but I have to actually read it again and again to find out the actual meaning and how it can be applied in the banking. and we have to see over a period of time how these technologies are adopted. But definitely, this many of the things have already come in, and although in nascent stage, but with the growing partnerships with fintech companies, and even we are taking the lessons from the tech fins, as you said. So a lot of market intelligence and data analytics platforms are being developed in the banks. So over a period of time, I think the banking will take a definite change. Whatever transformation we have seen so far, much more than that we will be seeing afterwards. So you have been very right to say that we have been dealing with Lakshmi in the banks, but Saraswati is also required to be there, and we have to adopt a lot of technology. Otherwise, like many big companies, many of the players may be out of the market very soon, because the customers' expectations are changing overnight. They are also actually very much conversed with these technologies, because many of them are working with the technology companies and they are our customers as well. So even though they are dealing with our banks with through generations, but now their expectation is that we have to be progressive enough and have to have good technology. When others are having, why we not, our bank will not have. So like that, actually, they are also having their expectations. So we cannot actually keep this technology at bay and embrace them sooner or later. So it is much better if we prepare our workforce and take the desired skill sets with in the workforce, so that they can understand these technologies and use it on day-to-day basis. But the deliberations of today will go a long way. Today we were having the presentations from the participants in other batch. This is having actually a combination of two batches, sir. Batch 1 and batch 2. So in batch 2, presentations were happening since morning, and some 5 presentations were on technology only.
Oh, great.
So, I was just thinking that in the evening we are going to have actually the master knowledge from about all these technologies which we were using just as a words. So thank you very much, sir. And we'll be troubling you again for more deliberations from your side. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. All the best to all the participants. One of the participants,
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Ask for the PPT. I'll share it with them. Yes, I'll share the PPTs. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all the best to all the participants. It was a long day. Thanks, Ravita ji, for coordinating it so well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.